Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Freedom Storytellers, the ongoing series where we get in depth on people's freedom story and beyond. I'm your host, Pastor Fury, and today's guest is none other than me. We actually bring in my co-host, Jariel Cosmano, from the Fury and Friends show, who's going to interview me today. And this is going to be a pretty in-depth interview where I share some things that many people have never heard, definitely have never shared publicly. I hope that this conversation challenges you, encourages you, and I believe that God's going to use something in it to really spur you on to love and good deeds. So let's go ahead and get into the interview.
So I think most people know that you're a husband and a father and a pastor, but they don't know your whole story. So
Right.
How about you tell us a little bit about your freedom story? Like, how did you start on this journey with Christ?
So for like the first 18 years of my life, growing up, I was a kid who just really felt like a fish out of water. We came from Michigan when I was 7, moved into Chicago. I turned 8 and we moved to the south suburbs. So we were in the city for maybe about 8 months. My grandfather passed away and we moved to the south suburbs with my mom and my dad and my grandmother. Little did I know that move was actually my mom trying to escape from my father in a way.
Okay.
I wouldn't say escape, but she was deciding that, you know what, this isn't working out great right now. I need to go closer to home, which was Chicago for her. His family was in Michigan. And if you want to come, fine. But this is where I need to be.
Yes.
And shortly thereafter, they got divorced. And that was the first thing that kind of sent my whole world into a tailspin. And I was struck with, now we moved into the south suburbs in this little all-white village called South Holland. It was all white at the time.
Yeah.
And like the opposite now. When we moved there, we were like the first Black family basically there in this little village. So it was me in like an all white school basically. And I was just trying to find ways to fit in, and it was awkward for me. I was struggling, kind of engaging with the culture, and I didn't really know how to fit in. And then soon thereafter, more Black families would come in, but now I'm like acclimating to this all white culture, and they're coming in really more embracing the Black culture, and now they're looking at me like,
what's going on?
Who are you?
Yeah.
Like, you're not Black.
What are you
I'm like,
doing?
wait, hold up, time out. So I'm not white and I'm not Black?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work? So I never really felt like I had a people. And when my father moved out of the house, I really was struggling with what it meant to be me. Like, who was I? I really dealt with acceptance issues, feeling like, the cliche, is this my fault that my parents got divorced? Did I do something? Like, is it because of, the way that I behaved? And then I started internalizing the behaviors of myself and my brothers as reasons why that happened. And if we could be good, then things would be better in our family. Like, so I was like putting on my shoulders the weight of being the good kid.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And I'm like 8-year-old kid,
Yeah.
So that was definitely a lot of pressure. And I was a good student, but my motivation in all of that was, I want to be flawless. I want to be perfect, so that not only, would things be better in my household, but like I was looking at my mom, who was really struggling after the divorce, and she was kind of crumbling,
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to make my mama happy. And my older brother was really acting out in school, and my younger brother was really acting out at home. And I was just like, okay, I'm the middle kid.
Yep.
I'm gonna be the good one, and that was my mantra growing up. And I realized two things that I always wanted to be true. One, that I would never get divorced
Right.
because I knew what that did to my family.
Yeah.
And two, that I was going to be a better father than my own father.
Yeah.
Now, my dad and I right now, like, we're in a great place. Like, I was just
Right.
talking to him the other day, as he just had a birthday not too long ago. And actually he just called me the other day to say he had some clothes for me. And I'm like, Dad, I love you, but your fashion and mine. Um, but back then, when he left the home, it was very sporadic visits. He would tell us that he was going to meet us and pick us up and wouldn't show up,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of empty promises. And it really taught me, unfortunately, don't expect anything from anybody. You're just setting yourself up for disappointment. So that was my journey. Those agreements were the things that I carried with me on into college life and everything. But in college, I deep dove. So I was a good kid all through the first 18 years.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, I'm away from home. Mama doesn't see me, so she can't be disappointed as long as I bring home them grades.
Exactly.
Even though I got on academic probation the first semester because I didn't realize that I wasn't able to do those both well.
Yeah.
But so I went deep diving into drinking and partying and girls. Like, I didn't even really date in high school. I had like one girlfriend for a minute.
Yeah.
And I ended up having panic attacks. I skipped over a lot of stuff in there, but I had what, 2 panic attacks in high school. Wow. And the last one, I ended up in the hospital in the psych ward. Oh, no. And they've got me on antidepressants and, trying to diagnose me with like manic depression and all of this like deep stuff. And I got a phone call from my girlfriend at the time. Yeah. I mean, and at that time, it wasn't like we were really boyfriend and girl. It was like we would meet each other at the locker. And, that was really it. We didn't go anywhere. But she called me up. And so because there wasn't a serious connection, she was like, yeah, it's over. So that's the one phone call that wasn't from my family that I received while I was in the hospital, was being broken up with. So that was fun. I've never really told that story anywhere before. So now we got it on wax. Yeah. So, but going into, college and everything, I was at this point trying to, I don't know, just see the way that the other side of the world lived with the loose living and all that. And I thought I was so smart that I could, I can do this and do that. And I managed to get by. I straightened up my act after the first semester, landed on my third major, which was finally English education, going from political science, history major, and then English education, because I was like, that's easy. Like, I do that. I communicate. I like this. I've grown up with kids. I'll do that. So I end up meeting this girl. I'm with her for 3 of my 4 years. And then when I graduate, I moved up here with her because we were in the south suburbs, right? Okay. But she lived up in the Zion, Winthrop Harbor area. So I ended up moving in with her. This whole time, mind you, I haven't mentioned much of my faith at this point. We grew up going to church every Sunday. Yeah. I had a grandmother who, she was this sweet yet firm, sweet old lady that would be sitting on her lazy boy in the home because she lived with us. Really, we lived with her. It was her home. Yeah. And she had this long belt that had tassels on the end, and she'd be sitting there listening to gospel music, playing her crossword puzzle. And if we got out of line, like Indiana Jones on us. And that was my grandma, and
Yeah.
loved her dearly. And she was the voice of like the gospel
Yeah.
in our lives, and was always like pointing us back to Jesus. And and I was in the church. I was even an alkalite where I would light the candles and stuff on
Oh,
a Sunday.
yeah.
But like I didn't know who Jesus was.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew the stories
Yeah.
because I went to Sunday school, even vacation Bible school. We talked about that with yours,
Yes.
like
Yes.
the juice and cookies.
Just there for the snacks.
Yeah. But like, and I even had my own Bible, with my name inscribed on it, but I never read it.
Yeah.
And I never lived according to it, but I always was trying to be good for different motivations, and not because the Spirit of God was in me and leading me.
Yeah.
So now at this point, I would be the one who would talk about like spirituality, and I know who Jesus is, but like I was the master of my own journey. You know what I mean? Like, I'm smart. I got this. I have surpassed whatever this rudimentary thing was y'all were doing. Yeah. And thought I had it all together. And I brought that same understanding with me into living with my ex. Shortly after that, we got engaged. So we were 6 months away from being married. And I realized that I didn't love her.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what love was. But as I was looking back at one of the two things that I said was, I'm never getting divorced.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, is she the one? Like, are you going to live with her for the rest of your life? And I was like, man, she's been with me for like 5 years now. So yeah, I should, right? So I proposed, but then I started like meeting new friends at my new teaching job up here. Mm-hmm. And I started realizing, oh man, there's like a whole life that I've yet to really live. Yeah. And she didn't want to go and do things that I wanted to do. So I just was like, no, this isn't what I want for the rest of my life. So like one of the hardest days of my life, and it's embarrassing to share, but like I remember it was a Teacher Institute day, and I called in sick that day, and I went home and I packed up all of my stuff in a U-Haul, and I waited for her to come home.
Oh.
It was bad. It was a really bad scene because I didn't know what would happen if I just like had a conversation with her and then still had to like live there.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't know how that would go.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. It was really bad scene. Like there was kicking, screaming, all of that stuff. And then I began to try to figure out life again. But like we'll fast forward, you know, now I meet Larissa, my actual wife, like a year and a half later, and was not at that point. I was like, I am not trying to do any real relationship stuff because I'm not trying to get messed up like that again. Like just out here having fun. But I met her at a bar, and that was back. So that year and a half in between there.
Yeah.
Like that was the wildest year and a half of my life.
Party time.
Yeah, because when I shared about the college days, really all of the partying and all that stuff was my freshman year.
Okay.
Because when I met her, my ex, like it was like lockdown. Okay. Like I had my own sort of like quarantine with her. And honestly, she's the reason why I graduated college. Because had I not met her, I don't know that I would have actually made it through my classes because I was just too busy partying. Yeah. So, Jay, if you're listening, thank you. Sorry again. Sorry. So anyways, I am now like in this wild party mode of like just being super, super, prodigal son type journey.
Yeah.
And I meet her, and there was just something about her, and I just could not not be with her. Like I was just like, and she was here on a work visa. So Larissa was born in Honduras. Her mom's 100% Honduran, and her dad's 100% Roman from Italy. Born in Honduras, but then grew up in Italy, and then would spend summers in Honduras. And so she was coming from Italy on a work visa for this travel agency that she still works for today. So she's been there like 20 years. Now she runs it. She literally runs the agency. And she was here just for a year at that point. They brought in people that were authentic to the travel that they were trying to sell. They specialize in European trips, and specifically Italy. And so when I met her, there was just, oh man, you're just unique. You are a different animal than all these other girls that I ended up running into, so I don't know, I was just drawn to her immediately. And she gave me the 2 days where she wasn't going to call me. She would not give me her number. And I gave her my number, and she called me 2 days later. And then she left a voicemail with her number on there because I didn't answer, which I thought was hilarious. Because I'm like, real talk, what do you know now that you didn't know 2 days ago about me? You know what I mean? Like,
it's a test.
And she admitted that she was just playing the game. That was what her roommate had told her. You got to do the 2 days or whatever.
Exactly.
So anyways, but ever since I called her back, like we talked every day after that.
Cool.
And I wasn't ready to get married, but I was definitely not ready to let her go back. And she was going to have to go back to Italy. So about a year and a half later, we ended up getting married. Oh, wow. And we went to Vegas. We flew to Vegas, got married in Vegas. Crazy story. While in Vegas, so we got married right after Elvis. Elvis did not marry us. Okay. But it was in the Viva Las Vegas chapel.
Oh, wow.
And the people right in front of us had Elvis marry them. But they have people there that are your witnesses that will sign. There was another girl that I kind of dated before Larissa that was the closest thing to a girlfriend. I told her that we were never boyfriend and girlfriend, but she was, her name is the same name, first and last, as the witness that's on our marriage certificate.
Oh, that's crazy.
And we didn't notice it until we were on the plane back from Vegas. I was like, hey, did you see this? So anyways, so we get married, and man, I'm taking a long time. I said this is gonna be the condensed version, but this is like so we're married, and I'm still a very broken man, still far from the Lord. And I was beginning a DJing side job at the time, full-time teaching, DJing inside on the weekend. And it didn't take but a week before I was already unfaithful to my wife. Mm. And that like just set the tone of the next probably 3 or 4 years of our marriage, of me trying to be faithful, trying to, have a solid marriage, but like still being so lost and so broken, and still looking for acceptance and identity, not knowing who I was. And my struggle throughout all of my years, ever since I think the day that my parents got divorced, was me working to try and please people and try and be who they wanted me to be in that moment, so that I would keep them in my life. That was what my subconscious was telling me there. So I became a chameleon. That was a part of why I was so messed up and broken all throughout college, because I renamed myself when I went off to college. I literally gave myself a nickname, and it stuck all through college. I was the bomb. Wow. I was the bomb. That's literally what my nickname was. I painted a mushroom cloud mural outside of my dorm room, Like in my like I'm gonna tag some people from my college days that can totally jump in the comments and attest to this. I had that, and the name of our floor, we were the third floor of this. It was called DEFCON 3.
Yeah.
And I had this big mushroom cloud mural outside of my room, and I was the bomb. And everybody called me the bomb. I was a radio personality and our school's DJ, and like it was ridiculous. I was this other version for so long, and I was like, nope, rebranding. Here I am. You know, and what that then ended up meaning though was like I wanted to stay up here in everyone's eyes. So when this group wanted to do that thing, okay, got you. You know, oh, y'all want to do this thing, and it almost didn't really matter what it was that they were doing. And I was going to be down because I wanted everyone to see me as the bomb. You know what I mean?
Definitely been there.
Life of the party is what I thought.
Yes.
But really, like I was like the death in the party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people didn't realize it at the time because we were all dead, spiritually dead, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm going through now my my days teaching at a school in Gurnee. I ended up getting fired from there because I being the life of the party, started this social network essentially in our school. It started off with just the first year teachers.
Yeah.
I called it the Woodland Youngins. And then it extended to second year and third year, and basically then it became this newsletter that I would send out, this mail group of all the people that wanted to be in the know on the social life within the middle school.
Yeah.
And people would send me events that are happening, and I would send it out, let everybody know, yada yada, what's going on. I got an email one day from one of our guys. He's like, "Hey man, make sure the right people see this." I was like, "Cool." Didn't open it, sent it out.
Oh.
It was porn.
Oh no.
It was porn.
Oh my goodness.
I sent porn out to about 75 people within our school district.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they had to let me go.
Hands were tied.
Yeah, like I was not mad about it. Like I got it. Like
yeah,
you don't keep your job. You don't do that. So
exactly.
They gave me a letter of recommendation because they're like, "Yo, you've been amazing." Like
yeah.
I don't know. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like had I opened this clearly, I would not have sent this out. Like
exactly.
So yeah. So anyways, I got let go from there. I started working at Waukegan High School. That was when we had Layla. And that was when things got really, really hard because I did not know how to balance fatherhood and everything else in life. And you know, you got kids, it's a life-changing experience. Definitely. When you're suddenly a parent.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, wait a minute, like the me time, that's gone. Like, wait, what is me time now?
I hope you enjoyed your me time.
Yeah. So I went deep into depression, and I for a little bit turned back to drinking, but that was really hard because like I really couldn't do that and still function. And then turns out the same guy who sent me the email like turned me on to weed. And got me high for my first time. And then I met some people at the school who also smoked, and they invited me over, and then that became my escape.
Okay.
And by the end of my first year of teaching, like every day as I was leaving the building, I was smoking up before I got home. I was driving and getting high. And then that was going on, you know, and I'm like high picking up my daughter, and watching her, and I mean every basically every waking moment that I wasn't in school, because I wasn't getting high before work.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've still got, I'm sure, some sort of, marijuana hangover or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know what you would
Not
call that.
functioning at 100%.
Yeah, no, not really, And I stopped grading papers and doing lesson plans. I was just kind of, and the culture of the school at that time didn't weed me out.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, you're great. Like my personality, you know what I mean? Like I say the right things. I always interview well. Like, you know what I mean? Like I walk into the room and I've got a lesson, you know what I mean? And it's like,
you knew how to give people what they wanted.
Exactly, because that's what I had gotten good at for years until the fourth year there. I had a new evaluator who was new to the building, and she actually was doing the job of like looking at my lesson plans and the way that I'm teaching and trying to determine whether or not to give me tenure. And she's just like, yeah, I don't think we can rehire you. And I got it, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I knew in my second year that I should be let go because I was no longer really doing the job. I was just showing up, going through the motions, cashing the check.
Yeah.
And it was destroying me because I actually cared about the kids.
Yeah.
But I was so broken. I did not have what it took to do what I needed to do then. And knowing that was just making me more depressed, because like when you're walking through life as a shell of what you should be, it does a thing to you that just makes you feel like
it makes you feel
awful. Like, wow.
Yeah.
It's what you know what I mean? Burden. What's the point?
Yeah.
And so when they let me go, I was just about to turn 30. And I remember that was when I was just questioning everything. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like you're 29, about to turn 30. You've been fired from 2 jobs in 4 years. You're high every day.
Yeah.
You're cheating on your wife. You're a horrible father in that regard because you're high all the time. And so I was like looking at my life and I'm like, oh, you're the smart guy. Remember, you're that brilliant guy who can do all this. And What? What is this?
No.
How is this your story? Exactly. And so I didn't know what to do differently. I didn't know how to fix it, but I knew this was a broken mess. And honestly, I was ready to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
I had contemplated suicide. The only reason the conversation in my head never went farther than the first thought was because I knew what that would do to my daughter.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. So I got to figure something out. And so all I knew my next step was stop smoking weed because you got to go get a job because for most jobs, you're going to need to urinate in a cup.
Yeah.
So I stopped smoking weed. And I was just like in my garage, and this is now over the summer, and I'm just cleaning up stuff in my garage because I wanted to keep my mind off of the fact that I just wanted to go smoke. And I remember I opened up this box of memories that I had like, nostalgic stuff in there.
Yeah.
And one of the things in the box was this old Bible promise book that I got when I graduated 8th grade. The church that we grew up in, shout out Gorham United Methodist Church, and whatever little old ladies I know it was that made sure that every graduate got a Bible promise book.
Yes.
Because I was one, and that Bible promise book is what the Lord used to grab a hold of my life.
Wow.
I knew I was looking for answers. A friend of mine had given me a book, What Should I Do with My Life? And I was even just reading that. I was like, I don't know what's what. So I remember opening it and I couldn't tell you what I read. I don't even remember a single verse that was in there, but I know the Spirit of God like leapt off of the pages and I felt in my spirit him saying, come home.
Yes.
And it was like one of those scenes from a movie where suddenly like all of these moments from your life are flashing before your eye. And like, I'm having all of the sins of my life, like being brought up before, and I'm just repenting one after another. Oh Lord, forgive me of this, forgive me. Alone in my garage, I'm like on my knees, I'm like bawling and just repenting out loud. And I gave my life to the Lord that day. That was June 21st, 2008. And I remember in that moment that what I was convinced of was, so I'd already turned 30 at that point. I turned 30 on the 6th of June. And I was convinced in that moment that I had 30 years to do it my way.
Yeah.
Where I was the master.
Yeah.
Right? I thought I was the bomb. I knew it all. And this is where it led me to.
That's awesome.
This is where it led me to. And so I was convinced without a doubt that God could do a better job with my life. So I was like, you know what? Here's the keys. You're in charge. When I think I know what's right, but your word tells me something else, you're right and I'm wrong. Yep. And it makes it so much easier now, because there's so many things that, like, as we're going through life, we're just like, that doesn't feel right. I don't think that's right. Yeah. All of that used to be my guide.
Yeah.
That used to be the way that I led life, because that's the way that people naturally do.
Exactly.
You know, but then it became like, but wait a minute, but what does God say?
Does God say?
Yeah. And then I had to make that memory of like, you remember what happened before.
Yeah.
This is where you went. So who's in charge? Are you the master again, or is she in charge? You know? And so that was the moment when it all shifted. And it took 6 months after that before I finally confessed to Larissa, because she didn't know that I was cheating on her.
Yeah.
She didn't know that I was high every single day.
Wow.
So I had 6 months of a new man, where like I'd stopped smoking weed. I'd thrown out all of my porn collection, and like it was a radical change, similar to what it sounded like you were describing when you were sharing your story.
Yes.
And I was a new guy. And I just remembered feeling like while we were good, there was still this lie between us, you know?
Yeah.
And the Lord convinced me that I needed to tell her. So I remember one day I told her, and she kicked me out of the house, told me to take Layla with me. And I went to my mom's house. And for like 3 days, we were down at my mom's house. And then it was about 3 days. I don't know for sure. Everything sounds like 3-day epic. Like, I don't know sure. You know, he rose again in 3 days. But it was literally like a death and a resurrection in our marriage. Because I felt like on that day, like I just gave us marital suicide, because she had told me over and over again before that, you cheat on me, I'm leaving you. You cheat on me, I'm leaving you. And without anything other than the Lord prompting me, I'm now confessing that I've cheated on you.
Definitely the Lord's leading.
Right, because there's no other reason. No. Unless you like trying to get out. Like you're trying to leave, you know? And so, but then she called me and was like, you know, I was talking to one of our good friends, and she asked me just plainly, you know, do you still want to be married? And then Larissa said that her response to her was that the guy that I am now was the one that she wants to be married to. And I was like, you know, I'm starting to tear up.
I know, that's so beautiful.
And she said, you know, if you had told me all of that on day one, when you started walking with the Lord, I would have left. Yeah. And I was like, wow. Because she didn't see the new yet. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it would have just been words. Mm-hmm. But like she saw what God did in my life. She saw that there was a new man before her. And then the fact that like she didn't catch me in anything.
Yeah,
It wasn't like I was up against the wall and I had to confess.
exactly.
So
Brought that to her. I
yeah.
love that. I love that. How God, it was in the perfect timing.
Sorry for the brief interruption. I just want to remind you that this video is brought to you by Freedom Story Media, where we exist to help you live lives of freedom and joy. And I wanted to let you know, if you like interviews like this interview is also in the Fury and Friends show on the Pastor Fury YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe at the link above and in the description, and we'll see you soon. Now, let's get back to this interview.
Ever since that day, a foundational piece of our marriage has been honesty.
Yeah.
And like, that's meant like, there's some hard truth sometimes where it's like, yeah, like where she and I aren't on the same page spiritually too, still to this day. There was a while where she was trying to go along with things, like meaning like pretend that it was such, and I was like, no, I don't want you to pretend.
Yeah.
Like, don't pretend that you have a faith. Like, that's not gonna be helpful, because then I'm living in some fantasy world. Like, exactly. I want to live in the real world, That's where we can actually connect. And that's been such a beautiful part of our journey so far.
Yeah. So. And I really like that about your story too, how she's not necessarily a believer and that she doesn't pretend. And I love that. She's just is who she is. You love her for that. And it's just so cool.
And it's so beautiful too, how the Lord still uses her a ton.
Yeah.
A ton in ways that like don't make sense to me. Like, I'll tell you this one quick story, because I used to get into my feelings about like, Lord, why haven't you saved her? I would be like, come on, God, like, I'm going hard after you now. Like, I am. And at this point, when I'm having these, like, I'm already, leading at a high level in the church. And I think I'd even started like in a pastoral role. And I'm like, and you still haven't gotten a hold of her. And at first, for a minute there, I was mad at myself because I was like, what am I doing wrong? That is the reason why she's still not saved. And then I was in a Bible study with a bunch of couples, and I was the only person in there as a single. I mean, not single, but I mean, I was the only one in there without their spouse. And the whole study was about praying the word over your spouse. And it was super awkward. And I remember that was a transformational study because in that season, the Lord put on my spirit the truth that it's not something that I need to do differently. Because I went to that Bible study like, okay, so what are the verses that I should be praying over her to get her to come to you? And like, how should I cause her to change?
What a step-by-step plan.
Yeah. I'm like, come on, give me the secret here. And he was like, okay, here's the secret. Come closer. You're waiting on me. And it was like, wait, what? Exactly. So you just haven't done it. So it's not even, because it was easier when it was my fault.
Yeah.
But now I'm mad at you, God. It's your fault. What? Like, I am all out here for you. And this one thing you won't do for me? You've come through in so many other ways. And then like, I wasn't talking to the Lord for a couple of weeks. It was bad. And then I eventually turned the corner because I was like, you know what? I need to like live again. Because when you're ignoring him, like there's
it's heavy.
Like it's like,
you can't function.
Right. So I was like, all right, Lord, like we need to talk here. So I began the conversation again, and in that season, I hadn't yet like fully reconciled with him, but like we were talking again. A guy that was the bartender, one of my good friends, was the bartender of the bar that I used to go to all the time. So he knew me at my deepest, darkest.
Yeah.
And I'd been trying to witness to him and invite him to the church and everything. He finally accepted an invite. And so he and his wife showed up and they brought their kids and everything. And I remember we're sitting at McDonald's that was right near the movie theater where our church was. We're sitting there after church one Sunday, and he just leans in. The four of us are sitting there, and he's like, so Arman, what's the deal about this church? Like, why? What's the big deal? Like, why? And I'm like, I'm ready to give my big, spiritual pitch. And before I could say anything, Larissa chimes in and she's like, I'm like you. Like, I don't believe what they believe. I'm not into all the church stuff. And most of them know that about me.
Yeah.
And they still love me. They accept me. They don't treat me any differently. And then she goes, I'm not a church girl, but if I'm going to go to a church, I'm going to go to this one.
Yeah.
And I was like,
okay.
No, I was speechless because I was like, I don't need to say anything. Like,
yeah,
that preaches better than anything I could come up with.
Exactly.
Because what I realized in that moment was she was able to step in a way that she couldn't if I had had my way.
Exactly.
Because she would have been just another Christian selling him on church.
Wow.
And instead, she gets to be one who's basically on the same level that he is. Like, I know where you're at.
Yeah.
And so fast forward about a year and a half, I got to baptize him, got to baptize his wife.
That's awesome.
Because God is God and I'm not.
Exactly.
Right? So that's one of those things that reminds me over and over again, because I have to go back to that memory frequently, that like, just because you think you know what's best, because like real talk, like her being saved, it seems to be the thing that is in line with what God's best would be for any of us, right?
Yeah.
But he has his own plan. He has his own journey, his own timeline for people.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's like, I'm gonna continue to trust you.
You just gotta
and
get
when
out
I
of the
forget,
way.
I'm gonna keep remembering that story. So
quit interfering. He's got his own plan for Larissa. Yeah.
And I share that right now, because I think that is even probably the first time I've actually recorded that. I've told people that, but I share that right now because I want to clip that so I can be reminded when I forget. Like, oh wait, you need to hear this. You need to hear this.
Exactly. Episode 3.
Yeah.
So that is an awesome freedom story. I was very intrigued and drawn in because I learned a lot of new things about you today.
Yeah. There's a lot that people don't know.
Yeah, you struggled with like perfectionism, identity.
Identity is a big one.
Yeah, and just your marriage. I think there's a lot that people can learn from that, because I think those are all things that we struggle with in our Christian walk. Like, they come in to play, especially when one person is saved and one person isn't, or even when both people are saved. You could start off on a journey together, but one of us isn't all the way there, and you backslide, and it is what it is.
And even when we are saved and in the faith, like, the journey doesn't end. Like, truly, it's like beginning. Like, now your journey, like actually walking with him, it was just now started.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a moment when I, like, speaking of my identity struggle, like, I was encountering the fact that even though I was saved and like leading in high levels in the church, that I still didn't really know who I was in Christ.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly being confronted by a sister in the Lord who was like, no, you are special. You are loved and this and that. And I'm like, because I was talking bad about myself,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, man, I gotta get that right,
Yeah.
And so I remember going to the Word for like 140 days in a row of like, okay, who am I in Jesus? And like, I blogged that story. And one of the things that I thought was happening in that season was that I was fixing the problem of my identity.
Okay.
And then maybe a month or two ago, I realized, like, my identity issues aren't a problem to be solved, but they're a tension to manage.
Yeah.
Like, where it's like, oh, you just need to always be consistently reminded
Yes.
of who you are in Jesus. Not that you learned it one way, check.
Yep.
You got that done now. No, it's like, no, because you're going to forget unless you remind. That's one of the main reasons why we need the word, is because it's continually reminding us, like our mind is being renewed, because our mind gets old, like our thinking gets old, it gets stale, and it forgets, it drifts away from the truth.
Back to the original sin program, honestly.
Yep. So that's something that I'm trying to continue to keep fresh, is this reality that, like, yo, I need to always have before me who I am in Jesus and be reminded of that truth, you know. And that's one of the things that I try to make a part of our journey in the Unshackled Network, you know, is our identity in Christ, you know.
So speaking of Unshackled Network, what led you to start this Unshackled Network?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make this one shorter. So I started pastoring in 2012, I want to say, and then in 2014 I was the campus pastor at our second location. And I didn't know it until I went to the second location. But in our original location, we were in a place that was pretty diverse, you know, ethnically and financially, like socioeconomically diverse, and in the middle of Round Lake Beach. And it's not a affluent area by any means. But when I was sent out to campus pastor at our location in Grays Lake, in the campus of CLC, I was recognizing in that season that the population they had different problems than ones that really spoke to me and my journey. I was really more for the messy, struggling in life, you know, growing up, you know, at a Black church and seeing, you know, the struggles of the minority community. That was what I think spoke to my heart, but I didn't realize that, because I went from the Black church to the ethnically, socioeconomically diverse, you know, I'm like, okay, then now I'm like, oh, this is different. This is not that. And I didn't know that was going to matter, you know, and it did. So I remember my season there was really praying for a burden for people that were a little bit more well off, and knowing that they still need Jesus like everybody else. And the Lord met me in that. But then as our conversations as a church were shifting, and we went from 2 locations to back to the one at the Round Lake Beach location, I was celebrating that, even though it was like, yo, but y'all lost, bro. You know, like, but still, I was like, no, we won, because like we actually got stronger because more people were trained up to do more things, and now we're back together in the place where I needed to be. You know, it was short-lived, because then we all moved to the other location, and I was like, oh no. And the conversation changed, and I won't go into too much of like the behind the scenes conversations, but it was more practical about, you know, what made the most sense long term to grow as a church. And I remember in that season, that was when the Lord started speaking to my heart about one day there'd be a church that he would send me to plant. And I remember in October of 2014 or 2015, was it? I remember it was October, because I remember it was Halloween. Might have been 2014 or 2015. But shortly after the Lord was speaking that to me, I began speaking it aloud to my wife. And then the following February, I went to my first church planting conference. So I'm like hardcore, like trying to learn, all while still pastoring. But I wanted to get ready for that eventual day. And I remember because I have such a focused mind, that the Lord had to like slap me and be like, yo, you're pastoring people right now Like, focus on that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you ready. I didn't send you to go get ready. I'm going to get you ready. And so I just put my head back down and pour myself back into the people and the mission that the Lord actually had me involved in. And then shortly after that, we merged with this other church in Grayslake. And then I came on full time, and it was like, whoa, okay. So we're going.
Like, the Lord's doing something.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa. But then August of 2018. So I'd gone full time. I think it was the beginning of 2016. Then August of 2018 comes, and I go on vacation. I take a sabbatical, and I go on vacation to Canada, unplugged from everything.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, alone with the Lord and not thinking about ministry. And in that season, or we're in the campgrounds, the Lord like took that vision down off of the shelf that I'd put it down and said, okay, it's time. And like, he had me reading this book that I didn't plan on reading. I was planning on reading another book, but then in the intro of this other book, the author's like, well, this book has gotten really popular, but if you're reading this book, I think before you read this, you should actually read this other book. That's really the book that leads to this book.
Yeah.
And so I still to this day have never read that book that I planned on reading.
Wow.
I read this other one. It was called Interrupted. And it was about her and her husband. Her husband was an associate pastor at an affluent church, and how the Lord got a hold of her heart and broke her heart for the poor, and was convincing her that it was time for them to leave their church and to go do ministry to the poor. And then shortly after that, her husband received the same call from the Lord. And like, that was completely in line with where I felt like the Lord was already leading me. So I was like enthralled by this whole book. And so I came back from Canada like I had a second conversion.
Wow.
Like, it was like, I can't even do this anymore. And we were in the middle of this big building campaign and like gonna deck it all out. And I remember showing up to our first staff meeting, and I don't even know if I've even told anybody this. But I remember looking around at the first staff meeting thinking to myself, what are we doing? And they hadn't changed.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It was like everything was still like what we were doing. I was all on board.
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks before that.
Yeah.
But like, I had changed.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, I just took, what is it, the red pill or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't know. But it was like, it was the weirdest thing. And ever since then, it's just been, I don't know, it's been different. So I didn't know what the Lord was calling me to, but I knew he was putting on my heart then that like I needed to now go experience ministry outside of that community, because I still, believe in what God's doing there to whatever degree he's, making, moves. And I didn't want to like be a problem. I was just feeling like the Lord was calling me to something altogether different.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what. And I thought it was interesting too, that for many years, our tagline at the church was simply different.
Yeah.
And now I was like, well, this might be like way different.
Yeah.
Like, we were like a different version of a thing that is the way, but like, because we were different, Torch was different.
For sure.
We talked about that in your story.
Yeah.
But like, this was like the Lord asking me to really just rethink what it meant to be the church, and like, that brought me to the simplest version of it, which is the most reproducible, which is God's people worshiping him and on mission, inviting other people into that worship.
Yeah.
Wherever that exists, that's church. And so we call that, and this wasn't something that we just created. Like we were learning from other ministries that were doing this work faithfully for years. And we were just inspiring. And I was kind of like reading books like Organic Church by Neil Cole, going down to Tampa, seeing the Underground Network over there, and reading books like Letters to the Church from Francis Chan. And so many things all in this season were just like, oh, wow, the Lord is like building something. And it all comes back down to that intersection of worship, community, and mission. And then shortly after that, I just started having one-on-ones with different ones that I felt like, you know, I'd vibed with in ministry, and maybe ones that I had discipled, you know, for seasons. And we just started having a coffee or dinner or a breakfast. And I was just asking them, what's on your heart? Like, what is God doing in your life? And what are you feeling stirred up about? Because I was trying to pull out of them, what's the mission that God's got you on? Because what I was like, I didn't know what mine was at the time. And so I was just like, what's because I feel connected to you. What's God doing in you? And how can I help? You know, like that was it. That was really it. And as I was having these conversations, I'm hearing people talking about, you know, wanting to minister to people in prisons and in the gang world, and hearing people, you know, struggling with the homeless issues that we have, and you know, and like I'm like, man, yes, all yes, that too. Oh, yes. And I was realizing that like there was a place in all of that where the Lord would call us into, and like I want to be a part of helping to support, you know, that gang outreach ministry. And shortly then after, frontline street intervention happened, and you know, people, if they heard in the last episode, got to hear some of the story behind that with Chewy. And I remember in the room I'm recording in right now is when Chewy was telling me that the former leader of that was handing him the reins to that whole organization that he'd been a part of for years before. And that was like, what, like a huge God moment. And then I was wondering, so what do you want me to do? Like, he's got a ministry, I'm helping him with that. Is there something where you want me to actively minister, Lord? And I'm having these one-on-ones with guys, because in 2018, I dropped an album, like I'm a rapper or something. I dropped an album called Everything to Me. You can find it on Spotify. Look up Pastor Fury. It's not all super great. There's some things that are good, but it's not all super great. And anyways, I produced the whole thing. I had a lot of fun. Like, I got my production equipment and stuff kind of back here on the shelf. And there's these young guys that are like, ooh, man, that's cool. Can you teach me how to do a thing or two about that? So yeah, I had one-on-ones with them, showing them some things. And then I'm like, oh, well, I can teach you how to, you know, walk with the Lord too, you know, like, So that was how, you know, Beats, Bars, and Bible started. So then that was the beginning of the network. And really what we're trying to do each and every day is find ways to help do like I did in the beginning, is discover the calling of believers and help pull that out of them, and then find ways that we can support them in that. So that's what we've been doing.
I think that's really cool. And one of the coolest things I think about, like, when I think about the Unshackled Network, is how, like, it's like so God, and how it's like so necessary, specifically in this COVID-19 time. Like, church is different. You have to think about different ways of doing church. And I just think that is just really cool that he was like putting a plan in motion. And
I really, you know, it's so crazy to me. So like, I look at like the story of Francis Chan. Do you know his story at all?
A little bit.
Yeah. So I mean, the quick version is he was a kind of a mega church pastor. Well-known pastor, had written some books, and out in California, and you know, had the story of it all seems like it's going good until the Lord got a hold of him in a different way. And it was, I think he had a very similar experience to me, because, but he's like back in like still trying to lead the church like that, and it just was
Exactly.
not working right, you know. And he had a conversation with his leadership team about transitioning out, and then he goes and starts this network of house churches where they're just a group of house churches and looking at the Bible and like, okay, let's do that, you know.
Yeah.
And like and all throughout San Francisco, and that was happening. And then he wrote a book, Letters to the Church, that came out as I'm coming out of my sabbatical, and the Lord gotten a hold of me. So I felt like the Lord got a hold of Francis Chan, sent him out ahead to then encourage and inspire me as he's sending me out ahead. You know what I mean? And then like the world goes nuts. Churches are shutting down. Yeah. And then it's like, people are like, what do we do? And I'm like, oh, hey, I got some ideas. You know, like
exactly.
Here's what you can do, because you don't need all of those things you think you need, you know?
You don't.
Yeah.
And
what was, I think, so powerful and great about that season is that people got a really good quiz, like a test on how their discipleship has gone.
Yeah.
Because if now you find out you actually don't have any way to lead your people, like that means you weren't discipling people.
Yeah.
You know, because you really only have a couple of leaders and a whole bunch of people just listening.
Yep.
Versus actual disciples that now they can lead their home. They can lead people on their block. You know what I mean? Like, or they all still like, gimme. Like, I don't know. So that I thought was a really healthy thing for the church at large to really come face to face with, ooh, this is where our holes are. Or to find out, yes, look how strong we are.
Yep.
Look at how our people are doing it right now. And like, you know, so it was a good litmus test. So
because that's what it's about, making disciples.
It's pretty simple. Hard, but simple. That's why we need him, right?
Hard, simple.
Yeah. He doesn't make it, complicated.
Yeah.
It's just really difficult.
Exactly. And I think it was an important lesson to be learned. I think it's, there's a time for this, there's a time for that, there's a time for both. But I think you have to have that flexibility too in your ministry. And I just think that's so cool. So what's been the biggest surprise with the Unshackled Network, do you think, to you?
The biggest surprise is okay. It's partly with the network and partly with me. Some of the things that coming out of the former church world, some of the things that I was like, oh yeah, this is part of the problem. Yeah, it's so much busyness, and we got so many programs and So I discovered that while that may be true of that world, it was also wholly true of me. That was something that I brought with me, is this sense of like being so driven to just do and do and do. Yeah. And I think if I'm not paying close attention, it's going back to that sense of trying to work for some sort of acceptance or some sort of validation, or feeding insecurities in a not so healthy way, even though it's in the godliest of senses, where it's like, oh, I'm doing this great stuff, but it's like, but why? Right? When we talked about in the COVID conversation, right? Like, what's motivating it? Yeah, maybe you're getting the vaccine, right? But are you getting it out of fear, or are you getting it out of love? Right? So like, I'm doing ministry, but am I doing it just out of a humble service to the Lord and what he's called me to? Yeah. Or am I doing it because I want pats on the back? Yeah. Because I want people to think I'm awesome. I'm the bomb. Right? So like, I've been in this journey recently, really face to face with places where my insecurities are trying to creep back up. Yeah. And like, maybe that wasn't just resolved in that place in the garage or during my season going through my identity. Maybe that too is a tension that I need to manage and keep going back to seeing, how am I doing with this? Do I still feel secure in the Lord, or do I feel like I'm needing to like earn something here?
Yeah.
You know? So that I think was a surprise for me, because I actually thought that was something I attributed to Christendom and that whole mega church or whatever world, that doesn't come here. No. We are holy. Different. We are just give me the Bible and the Holy Spirit and some crumbs and the people who need it. Like, no, you're still a sinner. You're still broken, and you still absolutely desperately need Jesus every minute. So that was a surprise. Surprisingly enough, it was a surprise that I'm still a sinner.
Oh, wow. That's typically how it is. Like, oh, I thought that I was delivered from that.
Yes. I am a saint, right? Yeah, still a sinner.
Oh, well, it's been so cool getting to know more about you. So I just have one final question.
Okay.
And I was going to say DC or Marvel, but I already know the answer to that.
So. Marvel for life.
Right. But what is something that you would tell your younger self?
Oh, man. So if I'm talking to like 8-year-old me, I would say, listen to your grandma. Like, she's just not crazy old lady. Like, listen to your grandma. Like, she is speaking such wisdom. And when she passed, that rocked me to the core.
Yeah.
Like, I remember she passed when we were on our way to our honeymoon. We were literally driving, and I remember just bawling my eyes out as we were on our way to the airport.
Yeah.
And I would just say, like, hold on to more and more of the wisdom of your elders, you know? And I think that's even something that I want more of now. Like, I embrace the wisdom of the older folks that have gone before me right now, and I'm like craving it. I'm like, because I've gotten old enough to know I don't know enough.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that was for sure the reality of my journey. The first 30 years was like, I just knew everything. Even as a young kid, like, my cousins will tell you, and they make fun of it when we come together and stuff. They're like, you always thought you knew everything. Like, I was the smart aleck, and it's the curse of having intelligence.
Yes.
That if you also then have the pride that goes along with that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that was me. Like, I was a smart kid.
Yeah.
And so I was also puffed up because of it. And I'm like, oh, you didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like even like I remember I would have like my aunt, who's like former superintendent of like school districts and stuff. I remember not too long ago, like 3 years ago, we were at a conversation at like Thanksgiving or something. And it was me, my aunt, and my mom in a conversation. And I got ready to say a word. And I switched the word to a simpler word. Like, rather than the word that I was going to say, that was like, I don't even remember what it was. But I remember my aunt called me out on it. And she was like, you know, I know what that word means. And it was just like, it was one of those moments where I was like, yeah, bro. Like, I know you're trying to communicate, but really what you're communicating right now is how little you think of their vocabulary.
Exactly. They will never know what this means.
Right. That was literally what was going on in my head for some reason. And I think that was just the way that I flowed.
Yeah.
Like, my words are up here, so your words are down here.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm thinking here, so I just got to always think about, how do I bring it here? How do I bring it here? How do I bring it here?
Yeah.
Bro, shut up. That's the problem when you are in so many circles where you're actually not being challenged, you know, with other people's wisdom. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah. If you're always the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Exactly. And you're probably more so doing that for your own ego.
Yeah, so you can be that. You know that.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I came into this room. So they would listen to my wisdom. Because when I go into those other rooms, they try to tell me to be quiet.
Exactly.
You need to be quiet, fool. You need to listen. You need to learn. So that's what I would say. Like, learn the wisdom of your elders. Because I think there's so many nuggets that I would say, yeah, trust God more. Like, absolutely. But I feel like all of those things came through my elders. I just wasn't listening. I wasn't listening.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, there you have it, episode 3 of Freedom Storytellers. If you are listening to this, go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. There's a subscribe link right up there. You don't want to miss any of these interviews, as well as some of the behind the scenes stuff on building out Freedom Story Media. And right over here is going to be a link to a video and a playlist, I should say, a playlist of all the other episodes of this Freedom Storytellers series. And I can't wait to see you guys back here next time on Freedom Story Media's YouTube. Be blessed and be a blessing.